Hello, everybody. How are you? Yes, I'm late. That's because I'm trying to find a copy of a little piece of music, which is public domain, to be able to tell you to do with the story. Oh, sorry. I can hear myself talking to me and you. Sorry. Just turn off the sound of my headphones. Right. That's done. I was trying to find a particular piece of music because it's relevant for our story. It's not long. I just want a tiny snippet of it so that you know which particular piece of music is being referenced in the story. I did happen to read that far ahead, but I think that's probably in the first paragraph of the story today. So I'm just going to just chat quietly amongst yourselves while I see if I can import it into what we're doing. I'm not sure if I can. I haven't done sounds before. So we'll just see. Yes, you will be hearing my keyboards clattering away there, unfortunately. Oh, it does recognize that. No, I don't want you to play back. I don't want you to play now. Sorry. I have no idea. I'm going to put my headphones on and just see if I can hear it. Because, as I said, I haven't done audio on anything I've been streaming before except for me talking. And why am I getting 3 of myself? I'm going to just delete that. Delete. I must have a couple of windows open that actually have audio playing on my browser. We'll try that again with just adding this in. It's a local file, yes. Ah, it works. So I will put my headphones on when I get to that part of the story. Actually, no. I'm going to put my headphones on when I get to that part of the story, and I will then stop talking at me. I think it's because I have 2 things open that actually are playing on my other monitor. I can carry on with that, but I just need to mute that tab. So let's go to another tab so I can see the button. That should mean I'm just going to check it. Okay, let's see if I can hear myself in there now. Is it talking to me? No, that's because my headphones are set up so that I can hear what my computer is doing when I'm watching a YouTube video or something like that. But I don't usually listen to myself when I'm actually reading to you. I've just done a Zoom meeting, which I was co-host of, so that's my extra thinking required for the day, already underway. I have also been trying to find this audio file so I can play it for you guys. And the controls aren't quite what I was expecting, but that's okay. We can cope with that. It's all just so much going on. So, and also I'm meant to be picking up a book from the library, and today was meant to be the last day for it. And the phone number to phone them is an Auckland City one, and I don't live in Auckland City. I live out in the country. So I wanted to talk to my local library to see if I could get them to hold the book a little longer for me. So I'm just going to thank them because they got back to me and said so. They said that they could do it. So now I can actually turn off my Facebook because that was showing me the notification. That was why it was open. And I've got my mod view on here. And I've got the sound turned off on my mod view, and I'm going to turn the chat back on for you guys in case any of you want to actually chat with me which, sorry, you couldn't actually really chat to each other before when I said just chat amongst yourselves, unless you were doing it elsewhere. But anyway, so just so overwhelming, right, sometimes. I just saw the face I pulled. So I found the audio I was looking for, just because it is one that a lot of people will be familiar with, and it is kind of relevant to the story because it's referenced in the story, and so I wanted to just have it available. But that necessitated trying to find an audio version of it, not a video version of it, because I tried doing it from a video and getting the audio from it, and it went all jangly and horrible, even though the settings were meant to be really nice for it, so it should have been nice and clear. And I have no idea why, so that's another thing I have to troubleshoot later on. But that's sort of stuff that happens here for me. Anyway, what else has been going on? I found the audio, yay. And then I had to download it. Thankfully, I didn't have to sign into something to download it. I've managed to import the file link for it into my broadcasting software, and I think I know how to use it because I got it to stop playing just before, so that was good. Oh, and I've just realised there's a media source button on here, so if I get really stuck, I can just hit the mute button on that, so that's great too. What else? The weather's being weird here in New Zealand at the moment. I can hear rain on the chimney, which is next to me up here. It's a metal chimney that comes through the room that I'm in, the space that I'm in, so that in wintertime, if there's a fire going because the weather's cold, my office space gets nice and warm as well. But it does get a bit noisy because it's a metal chimney, and so when rain hits it, I get the noise through there, and often you'll actually hear it when I'm reading a story. Sometimes you'll also hear it when it gets windy, whether it's raining or not, because the same chimney is very noisy in the wind, because the wind whistling past the top of it. And it's just one of those things that just, well, let's just say it adds character to the streams when I'm reading. I don't have a lawnmower guy here today, so that's nice. I don't have roadworks going on outside, so that's nice as well. Currently, my internet is working okay. We haven't got a power cut. All pluses in my eyes. Just starting to relax. I love being part of the group that I'm in, that we have a get together once a week on Zoom, and every second week I'm a co-host, and every second one of those I'm actually the primary of the two co-hosts. So I love it, great group of people, but I'm having to do my administrator hat and keep an eye on if everyone gets their chance to talk and all that sort of stuff, as well as having info to contribute, because I always have information that I can contribute. So it's now time to relax and enjoy a story. And who doesn't enjoy having an opportunity to just sit and listen to a story? So with that, I should probably introduce myself to anyone new who's here, or anyone who's new to listening to my VODs or my YouTube videos, because I have those as well. Hi, I'm Jev. I read old children's books. Books such as this one. That book belonged to my grandmother's brother. I think it's that one. Looking at the dedication, Lawrence Lord, yes, I'm pretty sure that's my grandmother's brother, and it was given to him in 1897, which is quite a while ago, more than 100 years ago. 197, 115 years ago maybe. So this book was printed more than 100 years ago. It's over 100 years old. Yeah, and I still have it. And it's still readable. And it has... You can feel the print on the page because it kind of presses into the page a little bit when they print it. And the illustrations are kind of like etchings, where it's a print from an etching, I think. The illustration in this one is made up of lines scratched into a plate that has ink then rubbed into it, and the excess taken off, and then the plate is pressed onto the paper, put through a great... When I say pressed, I mean put through a great big pressing machine, which is really, really heavy, to push it so that the ink then attaches to the paper and lets go of the printing plate. So, by the way, that style of illustration there is kind of like the era of the children in the books that we're currently reading. when did I say this was given? 1897. So this is late Victorian or early Edwardian. So if you take that, 10 years later, it's about the era of the book that we're currently reading, and it's about the one that we're currently reading is about 5 or 10 years before the previous one we read, which is William, which is way too much information. So I was telling you about reading old books. I grew up reading old books. I grew up reading my parents' books and my grandparents' books, the ones that they had been given that they had kept because books were expensive and they were special gifts at Christmas time and things like that. Thankfully, most of the books that they were given were not improving books for small children, the sort that the Victorians really got into, although we will probably read a few of those sort of books at some stage a bit in the future. Most of the books that I grew up reading were ones where there was just a little bit more fun goes on in the story. One of the series that we've been reading, we've read 3 of the books now, is called, the character is called William, and the series is often referred to as the Just William books. William gets into trouble quite often for, sometimes it's because he misunderstands what an adult means when they say something, and sometimes it's just because he wants to find out about something and so he experiments. There's usually damage to property and clothing and stuff like that, and probably his parents' egos, or at least their perception of their standing within the community, especially his father. He gets a bit worried about what people think of him for his son behaving in such and such a manner. But I do believe that the author had a lot of fun coming up with all sorts of things that she knew as a school teacher that adults would not appreciate, but she knew that children would. So they were my father's favourites when he was growing up, when he had those books, which is lovely. That's been something we've been able to share over the years. Those are the sort of books that I read. I've read all sorts. Did I read Alice in Wonderland? Yes, Alice in Wonderland, Through the Looking Glass, The Secret Garden, A Little Princess, The Wind in the Willows, you name it. There's been a whole lot already, and I'm going to continue reading. So I've been reading children's stories for the last 2 years. I started reading on Twitch at the beginning of the first COVID lockdown in New Zealand. So that's 2 years ago. More than 2 years ago now. I took a break of a few months after our first lockdown finished because I couldn't find any more of the particular books that I was reading at the time. And then when I found the rest of them, I completed those and found other books that I could read and continued reading since then. And it's been lots of fun. I've met lots of lovely people, and amongst the lovely people I have met are a group of people that we refer to ourselves as Codex. We are public domain book readers. We read books on Twitch so that other people can appreciate them, enjoy them, get something out of them. Books that get overlooked. Some of them are classics, some of them are just old. Some of them, personally, you can have a favourite book that you actually think should be a classic, but it's just not well known and therefore not appreciated, and so it's a great way to actually share it. So Codex is this awesome group of online book readers. We are a very diverse bunch. We come from different countries. I think the majority of the readers are from North America, but I'm from New Zealand, as you can tell from my accent, and my username, which has NZ on the end of it, that stands for New Zealand. We don't do this as a job. We do this for the fun of it. Some of us read books as our jobs, but not doing it this way. So we have audiobook readers, people whose job it is to read books for Audible and places like that, where they actually are doing top-notch recordings of these books, and then they get published and sold through Amazon, that sort of thing. I don't have those skills. I'm never going to have those skills. I'm not interested in rereading something to get it perfect. I'm not very good at creating the sort of sound space you need. I do not do accents well. they all end up sounding basically the same, except that sometimes someone will sound slightly older or younger, more masculine or feminine, ever so slightly more posh or working class. That's the main differences. And they're not consistent. They tend to wobble around all over the place. And sometimes I have to go back and redo a little bit, just because sometimes I will have read the wrong voice for someone. That's why most of the time I try to just read instead of worrying about that. But I do get involved with the story, and I get all excited about information that I know that I can share with you, and also information from past experience, stuff that I've done. I'm going to give you the link for Codex's Discord, so you can join up if you want. Now, the Discord server is not specifically for us readers. The Discord server is for people who also are interested in old books, to be able to get together to discuss them and actually get involved with our book club. We discuss books once a month, specific books. Someone will choose a book, and one of the readers will choose a book. Some of our readers will, when we get together at the end of the month, will actually read a portion of that online through Twitch when we're streaming, and then there'll be a discussion about it, and people can contribute in the chat to that discussion. But we will also talk about it in the Discord server when we're not online. I think we also do a movie night, I'm not sure. It depends on what time zone you're in as to whether it's night or not, I suppose. There's all sorts of things go on like this. And like I say, we've got a range of different, the readers have a range of different life experiences. One is a teacher. I know that at least one of them's a teacher. I'm not sure about all the rest. There's, like I say, a really wide range of experience, and not everybody just does reading. At the moment, that's all I do, and I focus on children's books. Most of the others read adults' books and sometimes children's books. And a lot of the others will actually also play computer games online as well. I don't tend to, just because I haven't got myself set up for that side of streaming, as you've gathered from me mumbling about trying to get this audio source set up for you. I'm still finding my way around a few of these things. But hey, it's all part of the fun, it's all part of the learning experience. Now, just a wee tip, if you see me looking over this side here, I'm just checking out something on my other monitor because I'm moderating for myself, basically. I'm keeping an eye on things in case there's something I'm meant to be doing that's on information elsewhere. And so my eyes are all over the place. There was something I was going to pull up here so I could follow up on information and tell you. I'm just making sure that that's in the right place. So if you want to find other Codex readers to go and have a listen to, below my video window here on Twitch, there is a list. Look for the tab that says Codex, similar to that icon that I've got over there, except it's got a coloured background like part of a typewriter behind it, where it says Codex with a picture of the book and the mouse. And underneath it is hyperlinks for the different members of Codex. And if you click on any of those, it'll take you to their Twitch channel. And if they're live streaming, when you click on it, then you'll be able to take part in their reading by listening, asking questions, making comments, or just lurking. So one of the things you can do here on my channel is you can lurk, and I'm good with that. I don't mind if you just want to listen. That's fabulous. I'm happy for people to listen to me while they're working, studying, doing housework, which is working, but it's more specialised type of working, that sort of thing. Just to keep your ears entertained while your hands are having to do something. So if you want to let me know that you're lurking and you're happy for me to say hi to you, then type exclamation mark and then the word lurk, no spaces, no capitals, and the chat box will say something to you about the fact that you're lurking. It means other people know that that's an okay thing to do, and I'll say hi to you if I catch it in time. Sorry, I'm not always good at that. I'm trying to think. I'm pretty sure there were some other things. Oh yeah, I did mention that I YouTube, didn't I? So I'll just give you a link now. The link that I've just given you is for my YouTube channel. I put my videos that have been recorded by my software here over onto YouTube, but with just the video window. So we don't have the overlay that says story time and then the book title and the picture and then the chat alongside it. Just this video window here. And I put that over into a playlist over on YouTube so that people can listen to a whole book. And there's a lot of people who haven't quite got their head around Twitch yet, who would love to hear the stories, and so that's why they're available for them over on YouTube. And if you're watching this on YouTube and you really want to be part of being able to chat with me and knowing that I'm actually live talking to you while you're watching, then come on over to my Twitch channel. Join Twitch if you haven't already. Follow me on Twitch. That's, you click the heart button, and that means that Twitch will then tell you, if you've got Twitch open, Twitch will tell you if I go online, when I go online, so that you can actually be part of the conversations that we have here. Twitch, like YouTube, is predominantly used in the free, as a free service, but if you choose to, you can put some money into it. There is no requirement to put money into it to be able to watch any of my videos, to be able to interact with me live. There is a subscription service, which means that you give a little bit of, you pay a small amount if people want to. People can pay a small amount of money, and that part of that money goes towards whoever it is, the streamer is that you're subscribing to. It's different to subscribing on YouTube. YouTube subscribe is like follow on Twitch, where it doesn't cost you anything. So there you go. You can still be part of it all. If you do choose to follow me on Twitch, there are some little emotes that I've made that you can use in our chat, only on Twitch. Sorry about that. I will put them across into our Discord eventually so that you can join my Discord server. It's a very quiet one. I think it's probably one of the quietest ones on all of Discord, because hardly anyone ever says anything there. Occasionally we do. Sometimes I remember to post the illustrations from one of our stories, and eventually I will put our emotes over there as well. And I have one emote if you subscribe to me on Twitch. I will do some more. I do promise that I will do some more eventually when I figure out what more to do. Actually, you could discuss that on Discord. You can come and make suggestions. If you're on Twitch and you're not used to it, it will not save your comments for me to see when I next come online. So that's why a lot of streamers use Discord as well, because it's a little bit like old-fashioned bulletin boards where you put up a message and somebody else can come along who wasn't online at the time it was put up, but then still see the message. If you're on YouTube, I do not put my videos as for kids, because that's a subcategory on YouTube. And the main reason I don't is because if you have a for kids video, one that's specifically labeled as for kids, you cannot leave comments on it. Nobody can comment on it. And so because I want people to feel free to comment on it, I've not made them specifically for kids. That's the labeling on their system. I do want all of it to be kept family friendly, because I do have grannies and their kiddies, their grandkids, who come and listen to the stories, and I want them to feel free to keep coming and listening to the stories. And if you want to be foul-mouthed or make all sorts of rude comments about things, this is not really a good fit for you. You're probably not going to enjoy the sort of stories that I read. And if you want to get into a conversation along those lines, go and find a streamer where that is the normal sort of thing to be talking like, and make those comments there rather than here. So 3 tips for new viewers, new friends here. First one, make sure you have something to drink handy. Second one is make sure you have something to eat handy. I've got lollies or sweets or candy, or depending on whatever nationality you are as to what you call them. And the third tip is have somewhere comfortable to sit. And with all of those things said, I think we can start reading once I've unlocked my iPad. I use a very old iPad mini. It's a first generation iPad mini. Come on, camera. Why are you not focusing? Come on. I'm back here. Here's the face. Yes, now it's focused. I've no idea why that took so long. Usually it doesn't. We're going to read. Let's read. We are reading The Story of the Amulet by Edith Nesbit, and this is chapter 6, and the chapter is called The Way to Babylon. How many miles to Babylon? 70. Can I get there by candlelight? Yes, and back again. It's an old rhyme. Jane was singing to her doll, rocking it to and fro in the house which she had made for herself and it. The roof of the house was the dining table, and the walls were tablecloths and antimacassars hanging all around. Now, I have explained what antimacassars are before, but if you weren't here then, they are a cloth covering, often with a crocheted edge, that was put on initially on the back of a chair, a soft padded chair, an upholstered chair, to stop the macassar hair oil that men would often have in their hair to keep it all slicked down with the styles they had at the time, from transferring from their hair to the fabric of the chair and wrecking it. They also used to put these covers on the armrests of chairs because they were padded, these upholstered chairs, and people, you get dirty hands and you don't want to be paying for replacement furniture if you don't need to. And so the actual, like a big dressing table doily, your granny's dressing table doily, where it's fabric in the middle and then it's crocheted around the edge, that sort of thing. And they were referred to as antimacassars because they caught the hair oil. They were against the hair oil. They were to stop the hair oil going onto the furniture and other dirt. So this is the reference here to the antimacassar hanging off the table to form a wall of this playhouse under the table. Part of the reason you come and listen to me reading is because I will ramble on about the strangest things and you might learn something new. So let's carry on. So the roof of the house was the dining table, and the walls were tablecloths and antimacassars hanging all round and kept in their places by books laid on their top ends at the table edge. Have you ever done that sort of thing? Made like a blanket fort out of the table and some things that you are hanging around the edges? Hi, how are you? Thanks for joining. It's really great to have you here, and I'm not quite sure how to say your name, so if you want to type that into the chat, I will know how to call you. So nice to have a new follower here. Anyway, I'll carry on reading. So kept in their places by books laid on their top ends at the table edge. The others were tasting the fearful joys of domestic tobogganing. Domestic, at home, tobogganing, normally done on snow outside. You know how it's done, with the largest and best tea tray and the surface of the stair carpet. It is best to do it on the days when the stair rods are being cleaned and the carpet is only held by the nails at the top, because then the carpet can be stretched out down like this and you can slide down it with the tea tray, instead of it being bump, 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 bump down all the stairs. It'll still go bump, bump, but it's not quite as tucked in. Of course, it is one of the 5 or 6 thoroughly tip-top games that grown-up people are so unjust, and old Nurse, though a brick in many respects, was quite enough of a standard grown-up to put her foot down on the tobogganing long before any of the performers had had half enough of it. The tea tray was taken away, and the baffled party entered the sitting room in exactly the mood not to be pleased if they could help it. So Cyril said, "What a beastly mess," and Robert added, "Do shut up, Jane." Even Anthea, who was almost always kind, advised Jane to try another song. "I'm sick to death of that," said Anthea to Jane, because she was singing this song about Babylon. It was a wet day, so none of the plans for seeing all the sights of London that can be seen for nothing could be carried out. That makes sense. Everyone had been thinking all the morning about the wonderful adventures of the day before, when Jane had held up the charm and it had turned into an arch through which they had walked straight out of the present time and the Regent's Park into the land of Egypt 8,000 years ago. The memory of yesterday's happenings was still extremely fresh and frightening, so that everyone hoped that no one would suggest another excursion into the past, for it seemed to all that yesterday's adventures were quite enough to last for at least a week. Yeah, you can have a listen to my previous recording. It covers what all that was about. So they'd ended up in Egypt, and it was not quite the part of Egypt that you normally expect to be finding out about, which is pyramids and the Sphinx and all that sort of stuff. This was more tribal peoples and other attacking tribal peoples. So the children arrived just before it all started happening, and it was a little bit much, but they managed to get home safely. Anyway, each felt a little anxious that the other should not think it was afraid. No, I missed a bit. Everyone hoped that no one would suggest another excursion into the past, for it seemed to all that yesterday's adventures were quite enough to last for at least a week. Yet each felt a little anxious that the others should not think it was afraid, and presently Cyril, who really was not a coward, began to see that it would not be at all nice if he should have to think himself a coward. If he should have to think himself a coward. No, that wouldn't have been nice. So he said, "I say, about that charm, Jane, come out," from under the table. "We ought to talk about it anyhow." "Oh, if that's all," said Robert. Jane obediently wriggled to the front of her house and sat there. She felt for the charm to make sure it was still around her neck, because it's like a little stone figure shape that, to keep it safe, they have put on a long piece of string, and she wears it underneath her clothing so that nobody else can see it and it doesn't get taken away. We'll carry on. She felt for the charm to make sure it was still around her neck. "It isn't all," said Cyril, saying much more than he meant because he thought Robert's tone had been rude, as indeed it was. "We ought to go and look for that amulet." So this is the charm, and the charm is going to help them find the amulet, whatever that is. "What's the good of having a first-class charm and keeping it idle, just eating its head off in the stable?" "I'm game for anything, of course," said Robert, but he added with a fair air of chivalry, "only I don't think the girls are keen today somehow. Funny how sometimes people will use others as an excuse to not get involved." "Oh, yes, I am," said Anthea hurriedly. "If you think I'm afraid, I'm not." "I am, though," said Jane heavily. "I didn't like it, and I won't go there again. Not for anything, I won't." Jane's the youngest. "We shouldn't go there again, silly," said Cyril. "It would be some other place." "I dare say a place with lions and tigers in it, as likely as not." Seeing Jane so frightened made the others feel quite brave. They said they were certain they ought to go. "It's so ungrateful to the Samoyed not to," Anthea added a little primly. Jane stood up. She was desperate. "I won't," she cried. "I won't. If you make me, I'll scream and I'll tell old nurse, and I'll get her to burn the charm in the kitchen fire. So there." You can imagine how furious everyone was with Jane for feeling what each of them had felt all morning. In each breast the same thought arose: no one can say it's our fault. And they at once began to show Jane how angry they all felt, that the fault was hers. This made them feel quite brave. "Tell, tell, tit, its tongue shall split, and all the dogs in our town shall have a little bit," sang Robert. That was a bit nasty. "It's always the way if you have girls in anything," said Cyril in a cold displeasure that was even worse than Robert's cruel quotation. And even Anthea said, "Well, I'm not afraid if I am a girl," which of course was the most cutting thing of all. Jane picked up her doll and faced the others with what is sometimes called the courage of despair. "I don't care," she said. "I won't. So there. It's just silly going to places when you don't want to, and when you don't know what they're going to be like. You can laugh at me as much as you like. You're beasts, and I hate you all." With these awful words she went out and banged the door. Then the others would not look at each other, and they did not feel so brave as they had done. Cyril took up a book, but it was not interesting to read. Robert kicked a chair leg absently. His feet were always eloquent in moments of emotion. Anthea stood pleating the end of the tablecloth into folds. She seemed earnestly anxious to get all the pleats the same size, just keeping herself occupied. Sorry, I'm just pulling part of my headphones apart so I can use one bit of it later on when I need it. See? I can take off the earpieces because they just clip on to the bar that goes over the top of your head, so I can just hold it up and check that something's working. It's quite handy. She seemed earnestly anxious to get all the pleats the same size. The sound of Jane's sobs had died away. Suddenly Anthea said, "Oh, let it be Pax," that means peace. "Poor little puss, you know she's the youngest." "She called us beasts," said Robert, kicking the chair suddenly. "Well," said Cyril, who was subject to passing fits of justice, "we began, you know. At least you did." Cyril's justice was always uncompromising. "I'm not going to say I'm sorry if you mean that," said Robert, and the chair leg cracked to the kick he gave as he said it. "Oh dear, now he's breaking the chair." "Oh, do let's," said Anthea. "We're 3-1 and Mother does so hate it if we row. Come on, I'll say I'm sorry first, though I didn't say anything hardly." "All right, let's get it over," said Cyril, opening the door. "Hi, you, Puss!" Far away up the stairs a voice could be heard, singing brokenly but still defiantly. "How many miles to Babylon? 70. Can I get there by candlelight? Yes, and back again." It was trying, for this was plainly meant to annoy. But Anthea would not give herself time to think about this. She led the way up the stairs, taking 3 at a time, and bounding to the level of Jane, who sat on the top step of all, thumping her doll to the tune of the song she was trying to sing. "I say, Puss, let it be Pax. We're sorry if you are." It was enough. The kiss of peace was given by all. Jane, being the youngest, was entitled to this ceremonial. Anthea added a special apology of her own. "I'm sorry if I was a pig, Puss dear," she said. That's Jane's nickname. "Especially because in my really and truly inside mind, I've been feeling a little as if I'd rather not go into the past again either. But then do think, if we don't go, we shan't get the amulet. And oh, Puss, think if we could only get Father and Mother and the lamb safe back," which has been their motivation the whole time. The Samiad, the sand fairy that they rescued from the pet cellar, has said to them that they can have some wishes if they find this amulet. So far they've found the charm that is meant to connect with the amulet, but they now need to find the amulet. "And oh, Puss, if we could only get Father and Mother and the lamb safe back. We must go, but we'll wait a day or two if you like, and then perhaps you'll feel braver." "Raw meat makes you brave, however cowardly you are," said Robert, to show that there was now no ill feeling. "And cranberries. That's what Tartars eat, and they're so brave it's simply awful. I suppose cranberries are only for Christmas time, but I'll ask old Nurse to let you have your chop, very raw, if you like." "That's a rather odd statement." "I think I could be brave without that," said Jane hastily. She hated underdone meat. "I'll try." At this moment the door of the learned gentleman's room opened, and he looked out. "Excuse me," he said in that gentle, polite, weary voice of his, but was I mistaken in thinking I caught a familiar word just now? Were you not singing some old ballad of Babylon?" "No," said Robert. "At least Jane was singing How Many Miles, but I shouldn't have thought you could have heard the words for—" He would have said for sniffing, but Anthea pinched him just in time. "I did not hear all the words," said the learned gentleman. "I wonder, would you recite them to me?" So they all said together, "How many miles to Babylon? 70, which means 70, because a score is 20. So 70, that's 20, 40, 60, and 10. 60 and 10 is 70. Yes, weird numbering on my fingers. "Can I get there by candlelight? Yes, and back again." I wonder if, have any of you ever watched the movie Stardust? They use what they call a Babylon candle for going places by wishing to be there when they light it. I wonder if the idea comes from this rhyme, getting there by candlelight. Can I get there by candlelight? And the reference to going to Babylon. I bet that's where it comes from. There's some connection there. "I wish one could," the learned gentleman said with a sigh. "Can't you?" asked Jane. Babylon has fallen, he answered with a sigh. You know it was once a great and beautiful city, and the centre of learning and art, and now it is only ruins, and so covered up with earth that people are not even agreed as to where it once stood. He was leaning on the banisters, and his eyes had a faraway look in them, as though he could see through the staircase, without the splendour and glory. No, I'll read that bit again. See through the staircase window the splendour and glory of ancient Babylon. Just a moment. I'm just going to look for something. Let's see if Babylon is on Google Maps. No. Babylon, Iraq. Okay, so Babylon is now a district just south of Baghdad in Iraq. I'm just reading the information. An area of 5,000 and something square kilometres with an estimated population of 2-something million people in 2018. The provincial capital, that means the capital of the province, is the city of Hilar, however that's meant to be pronounced, which lies opposite the ancient city of Babylon on the Euphrates River. So there's the Euphrates. Let's see if we can find something that supposedly is meant to be where Babylon was. I can't see anything specifically. Right, let's see. I have a map set up here. Come on. No, that one. That one. No. It was doing it for me the other day when I did this. No, not that one. Ah! I made it work. Ah, there. I was clicking on the wrong thing. So what happens is I open up the thing that controls this map that you see behind me. See how it's got this extra panel here? Now, I don't need that straight away, except for finding something. You don't need it, sorry. I need it. So if it's not going to let me. Interact. There. That's what I forgot. Right. So I can type in this and you can actually see what I'm doing. Ooh, I'll come over here, type in here. Babylon, Iraq. And so there you go. If I put this over here, if I zoom out like this, there you go. There's Iraq, this country here. There's Baghdad, and the Babylon I'm currently looking at is the modern region of Babylon. If I zoom in, see how I can zoom in and you can see it. This is cool because I used to have to do it as a screen capture. So there's the capital of the region, Hilar, this one here, and just checking which one this one is. It's going to give me, that's the Tigris River, because Babylon was meant to be between the Tigris and the Euphrates. And I'm wondering if this here, that historic marker, marker for an historic place, is meant to be for Old Babylon. It doesn't actually say in here. a great monument more than 4,000 years ago near the place of Prophet Ibrahim Mosque. Unfortunately, it's locked and neglected by the Iraqi government. So this is obviously to do with the ancient ruins in that area. So they said that nearer to the Euphrates, which is, so there's Hilla, which is a modern capital of this region of Babylon, is the old Babylon. And so this is the Euphrates River down here. So quite possibly it's somewhere down along this, that the place they're talking about in the book, that Babylon is. So I'm going to look at zooming in a little bit. Let's. That was that bit I was looking at before. There's people live and farm all of these areas around here. So as you can see, near the rivers is where it's much easier to farm, and that is often why old cities are in those sort of places. So I'm just going to turn off the map for now, and you can look back to, this is Fitzroy Street in London, where the children are living currently. Let's find out, because he wanted to go to Babylon, this old gentleman, who is, I think, an archaeologist or an historian, probably more an historian than an archaeologist. And so he's spoken with them about the writing that was on the charm that they had and said that it was Egyptian. Now he's talking about Babylon. Babylon is in a completely different country, even historically it was. So not Egypt. So I thought he was an Egyptologist, but I think he's an historian. So we'll carry on with the story. I say, Cyril remarked abruptly, you know that charm we showed you, and you told us how to say the name that's on it? Yes, said the old gentleman. Well, do you think that charm was ever in Babylon? It's quite possible, the learned gentleman replied. Such charms have been found in very early Egyptian tombs, yet their origin has not been accurately determined as Egyptian. They may have been brought from Asia, or supposing the charm to have been fashioned in Egypt, it might very well have been carried to Babylon by some friendly embassy or brought back by the Babylonish army from some Egyptian campaign as part of the spoils of war. There you go. Asia, in his terminology, being this region that is east of Greece, basically. Geographically, see, I live in New Zealand. To me, Asia is what over in Europe they refer to as Far East Asia. So to me, Asia is China, Japan, Korea, all of those countries, that part of the world. Whereas for the Europeans, Asia is actually most of Turkey, not all of it, but most of Turkey, and all of that land mass which is south of Russia but goes across towards India. And that's what they call Asia. And so that's why the old gentleman is referring to may have been brought from Asia. We'll carry on. It might, where did I get to? As part of the spoils of war. The inscription may be much later than the charm. Oh yes, it is a pleasant fancy that the same splendid specimen of yours was once used amid Babylonish surroundings. The others looked at each other, but it was Jane who spoke. Were the Babylon people savages? Were they always fighting and throwing things about? That's actually a very realistic question for someone who has had a little bit of an upsetting time last time that they were travelling back in history, especially when she's as young as she is. And throwing things about, for she had read the thoughts of the others by the unerring light of her own fears. The Babylonians were certainly more gentle than the Assyrians, said the learned gentleman, which is not the people they were seeing. And they were not savages by any means, a very high level of culture. He looked doubtfully at his audience and went on, because he doesn't normally speak about these sort of things with children. He's an academic. I mean, they made beautiful statues and jewellery and built splendid palaces, and they were very learned. They had glorious libraries and high towers for the purpose of astrological and astronomical observation. Said Robert. I mean, for stargazing and fortune-telling, said the learned gentleman. And there were temples and the beautiful hanging gardens. I'll go to Babylon if you like, said Jane abruptly, and the others hastened to say, done, before she could have time to change her mind. Ah, said the learned gentleman, smiling rather sadly, one can go so far in dreams when one is young. He sighed again, and then adding with a laboured briskness, I hope you'll have a jolly game. He went into his room and shut the door. So he thinks that they're just talking about something they're going to use in their imagination, and he's realised that his thoughts about being young and using your imagination could be misconstrued as being rather negative, and he's trying to be kind to these children. So he then sort of tries to temper it by saying, I hope you have a jolly game. He said jolly as if it was a foreign language, said Cyril. Obviously not part of what the old gentleman usually thinks about. Come on, let's get the Psammead and go now. I think Babylon seems a most frightfully jolly place to go. Now, if you're new here, the Psammead was the sand fairy that the children found in the first book of the trilogy. That book is called Five Children and It, and the it of the title is the Psammead, which is a sand fairy. Allergic basically to water, does damage to him. It's never referred to as him in the books. Rather odd-looking creature, not what you or I would think of as a fairy. It has bat-like ears, a small but rather round body that's very hairy, a little described with arms and legs, and its body being a little bit like an old monkey. And its eyes are on stalks, like a snail's eyes, and it can pull them in close or poke them out to look when it's really interested in something. So it's rather unusual, but this is the Psammead of the stories. Anyway, let's get the Psammead and go now. I think Babylon seems a most frightfully jolly place to go. So they woke the Psammead and put it in its bass bag with the waterproof sheet in case of inclement weather in Babylon, because they don't want it to get wet. So they've got probably an oilskin piece of oilcloth, which is like canvas or a light canvas that has an oil and wax treatment so that they go into the fabric and it sheds water off it. Early version of raincoats were made out of them, and they're actually very effective, especially if you keep re-oiling them. The bass bag is a bag that some fish came from the fishmongers in. Obviously a bag that's regularly made for putting that type of fish in. And I have no idea why they have a specialist bag for it. Maybe you can find out and share it with us. It was very cross. The Psammead was very cross with being woken up. But it said it would go. It said it would as soon go to Babylon as anywhere else. The sand is good thereabouts, it added, because it loves being in the sand. Then Jane held up the charm, and Cyril said, we want to go to Babylon to look for the part of you that was lost. He's talking to the charm. Will you please let us go there through you? Please put us down just outside, said Jane hastily, and then if we don't like it, we needn't go inside. Don't be all day, said the Psammead. So Anthea hastily uttered the word of power, without which the charm could do nothing. Hekal setche, she said softly, and as she spoke the charm grew into an arch so tall that the top of it was close against the bedroom ceiling. Outside the arch was the bedroom, Outside the arch was the bedroom, the painted chest of drawers and the Kidderminster carpet, and the washstand with the riveted willow pattern jug. Riveted probably because it's been mended. They used to do that. If the handle came off, there was a special way of very carefully drilling a hole through each side of where it was broken and putting a piece of metal through and then making the end of the metal fatter so that it couldn't pull back through and it would hold the two pieces together. So it didn't waterproof it. You couldn't use it for putting together a plate to keep it a liquid in, but to put a handle on so you can still use it. I'm guessing that's what it is, unless it's an enamel jug which is riveted together. But I've seen the riveted ceramics before, especially if it's called willow pattern. The washstand with the riveted willow pattern jug and the faded curtains and the dull light of indoors on a wet day. Through the arch showed the gleam of soft green leaves and white blossoms. They stepped forward quite happily. Even Jane felt that this did not look like lions, and her hand hardly trembling at all as she held the charm for the others to go through, and last slipped through herself and hung the charm, now grown small again, round her neck. The children found themselves under a white-blossomed, green-leafed fruit tree, in what seemed to be an orchard of such trees, all white-flowered and green-foliaged. I suppose I should see what the picture is I'm meant to be showing you. No, not quite there yet. I've got it ready. All white-flowered and green-foliaged. Among the long green grass under their feet grew crocuses and lilies and strange blue flowers. In the branches overhead thrushes and blackbirds were singing, and the coo of a pigeon came softly to them in the green quietness of the orchard. "Oh, how perfectly lovely," said Anthea. "Why, it's like home exactly. I mean England, only everything's bluer and whiter and greener, and the flowers are bigger." The boys owned that it certainly was fairly decent, and even Jane admitted that it was all very pretty. "I'm certain there's nothing to be frightened of here," said Anthea. "I don't know," said Jane. "I suppose the fruit trees go on just the same, even when people are killing each other," which is a very good point. Fruit trees don't stop fruiting unless you actually damage them. They don't stop and think about whether there's a war going on. I didn't half like what the learned gentleman said about the hanging gardens. I suppose they have gardens on purpose to hang people in. I do hope this isn't one. Different idea. Hanging gardens, nobody's ever found them, but the idea that a lot of people have come up with is that they were various platforms where plants hung down over the edge of them to provide the gardens. Because you remember from the map, there was quite a bit of sand outside the city area. There's more plant growth next to the river now because they have modern irrigation, but in the old days they didn't have that. "Of course it isn't," said Cyril. "The hanging gardens are just gardens hung up, I think, on chains between houses, don't you know, like trays. Come on, let's get somewhere." They began to walk through the cool grass. As far as they could see, there was nothing but trees and more trees. At the end of their orchard was another one, only separated from theirs by a little stream of clear water. They jumped this and went on. Cyril, who was fond of gardening, which meant that he liked to watch the gardener at work, not do it, was able to command the respect of the others by telling them the names of a good many trees. There were nut trees and almond trees and apricots and fig trees with their big 5-fingered leaves, and every now and then the children had to cross another brook. "It's like between the squares and through the looking-glass," said Anthea, which is exactly what I was just thinking. And if you want to listen to Through the Looking-Glass, it's one of 2 playlists I have that has more than one book in it. So there's Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking-Glass are together on my YouTube channel, which I will give you in case you've only just arrived. I will give you the link for it so that you can actually go and find that to enjoy the descriptions of things in Through the Looking-Glass. At last they came to an orchard which was quite different from the other orchards. It had a low building in one corner. "These are vines," said Cyril superiorly, "and I know this is a vineyard. I shouldn't wonder if there was a wine press inside that place over there." At last they got out of the orchards and onto a sort of road, very rough and not at all like the roads you're used to. It had, see, this is one of the roads in the city. It looks like dirt, but it's not. It's cobbled. It's got a lot of dirt and sawdust and horse manure and things like that all on it, but the actual surface underneath all that is hard. They do have street sweepers, but that doesn't mean that they actually have someone who sweeps all of the street. And it's got to be something that's done when there's not a lot of traffic. So the children are used to places that have sealed roads, sealed by cobblestones, probably, most of the time. And now I'm blethering. Let's find it. At last they got out of the orchards and onto a sort of road, very rough and not at all like the roads you are used to. It had cypress trees and acacia trees along it, and a sort of hedge of tamarisks, like those you see on the road between Nice and Cannes, or Littlehampton, if you've only been as far as that, instead of south of France. And now in front of them they could see a great mass of buildings. I think that's this picture here. Let's just pull up the folder that is from, and it will show me what the caption is on that picture. In front of them, they could see a great mass of buildings. There you go. So there's trees here, and then there's all these buildings up along the top, and this is the road that they're walking along, this dusty road. And now in front of them they could see a great mass of buildings. There were scattered houses of wood and stone here and there among green orchards, and beyond these a great wall that shone red in the early morning sun. The wall was enormously high, more than half the height of St. Paul's, and in the wall were set enormous gates that shone like gold as the rising sun beat on them. So I'll just get that one out of the way for you now. And find the next one because I'm going to need it. Get it ready. Enormous gates that shone like gold as the rising sun beat on them. Each gate had a solid square tower on each side that stood out from the wall and rose above it. Beyond the wall were more towers and houses, gleaming with gold and bright colours. Away to the left ran the steel-blue swirl of a great river. That would be the Euphrates, and the children could see through a gap in the trees that the river flowed out from the town under a great arch in the wall. "Those feathery things along by the water are palms," said Cyril instructively. "Oh, yes, you know everything," Robert replied. "What's all that grey-green stuff you see away over there, where it's all flat and sandy?" "All right," said Cyril loftily. "I don't want to tell you anything. I only thought you'd like to know a palm tree when you saw it." "Look," said Anthea, "they're opening the gates." And indeed the great gates swung back with a brazen clang, and instantly a little crowd of a dozen or more people came out and along the road towards them. The children with one accord crouched behind the tamarisk hedge. "I don't like the sound of those gates," said Jane. "Fancy being inside when they're shut. You'd never get out." "You've got an arch of your own to go out by." The Samiad put its head out of the basket to remind her. "Don't behave so like a girl. If I were you, I should just march right into the town and ask to see the king." The Samiad has a whole other idea about how you do things, I think. There was something at once simple and grand about this idea, and it pleased everyone. So when the work people had passed, they were work people, the children felt sure because they were dressed so plainly, just one long blue shirt thing of blue or yellow. I think they meant they were mainly blue with a bit of yellow because they said they were blue and then they said they were of blue and yellow. Doesn't matter really. The 4 children marched boldly up to the brazen gate between the towers. It's probably what this picture is. It says they approached the gates of Babylon. So I'm guessing this is the brazen gates. This one here and then this one here, which you can only see the edge of. And then there's the children walking up to it. Let's see if I can make it a bit bigger for you so that you can actually see some of the detail. That's the thing with these illustrations, is they're actually quite detailed. So there's the gate. There's one of the gates. There's some of the guards. Here's the children coming up. The two girls with their bonnets on, their caps, hats. And then there's the top of the gate. A lot of detail. I'm guessing that the illustrator actually spent quite a bit of time looking at pictures from the different places that are described in the book, because they do really seem to have the feel of the sort of things that they're talking about in the story, the sort of places, because there's been a lot of research done ever since then, and archaeological research and stuff like that. So it's meant that we have a lot more knowledge than they had at the time that the book was written. But for what we know of that time period, they seem to be reasonably accurate so far. There was something at once simple and grand about this idea, and it pleased everyone. So when the work people had passed, they were work people, the 4 children marched boldly up to the brazen gate between the towers. The arch above the gate was quite a tunnel. The walls were so thick. I could imagine they would be, actually. Courage, said Cyril. Step out. It's no use trying to sneak past. Be bold. Robert answered this appeal by unexpectedly bursting into the British Grenadiers. And to its quick step they approached the gates of Babylon. And I'm going to play you this little bit. Hang on. Make sure I've got it ready and it's working, because I need to know when to turn it off. It would help if I had the volume up, wouldn't it? Because then I could hear it. I'm going to play that back to the beginning. So you might recognise that. I don't know why it's not coming through my headphones. It was before, when I was trying to test it, when I was getting set up. But my overlay system, my OBS system, it shows me that it was playing it. So there you go. You heard a snippet of it. That's the tune, the British Grenadiers. Or something like that. Anyway, so he sang to it, some talk of Alexander and some of Hercules, of Hector and Lysander, and such great names as these. But of all the gallant heroes, ... And continuing, this brought them to the threshold of the gate, and 2 men in bright armour suddenly barred their way with crossed spears. Who goes there? They said. I think I must have explained to you before how it was that the children were always able to understand the language of any place they might happen to be in, and to be themselves understood. If not, I have no time to explain it now. Just as well, I'm not doing it. We come from very far, said Cyril mechanically, because he's done all this before, from the empire where the sun never sets, and we want to see your king. If it's quite convenient, amended Anthea. The king, may he live forever, said the gatekeeper, is gone to fetch home his 14th wife. Where on earth have you come from? Not to know that. The queen, then, said Anthea hurriedly, and not taking any notice of the question as to where they had come from. The queen, said the gatekeeper, may she live forever, gives audience today 3 hours after sun rising. But what are we to do till the end of the 3 hours? Asked Cyril. The gatekeeper seemed neither to know nor to care. He appeared less interested in them than they could have thought possible. But the man who had crossed spears with him to bar the children was more human. Let them go in and look about them, he said. I'll wager my best sword they've never seen anything to come near our little village. He said it in the tone people used for when they called the Atlantic Ocean the herring pond. Rather boastful, then. The gatekeeper hesitated. They're only children after all, said the other, who had children of his own. Let me off for a few minutes, Captain, and I'll take them to my place and see if my good woman can't fit them up in something a little less outlandish than their present rig. Then they can go have a look round without being mobbed. May I go?" He's pretty clever. He's pretty switched on, this guy. He's actually recognised that, that would actually give them a little bit more freedom without him actually pressing them about where they've come from. "Oh, yes, if you like," said the captain, "but don't be all day." Man led them through the dark arch into the town, and it was very different from London. For one thing, everything in London seems to be patched up out of old odds and ends, but these houses seem to have been built by people who liked the same sorts of things. Not that they were all alike, for though all were squarish, they were of different sizes and decorated in all sorts of different ways, some with paintings and bright colours, some with black and silver designs. There were terraces and gardens and balconies and open spaces with trees. Their guide took them to a little house in a back street where a kind-faced woman sat spinning at the door of a very dark room. And I'm just going to see if I can find it. Nope. No, I was just checking that. Sorry, get more comfortable. Just checking that wasn't where we're meant to have the next illustration. "There," he said, "just lend these children a mantle each so that they can go about and see the place till the Queen's audience begins. You leave that wall for a bit and show them round if you like. I must be off now." The woman did as she was told, and the 4 children, wrapped in fringed mantles, went with her all about the town. And oh, how I wish I had time to tell you all that they saw. It was all so wonderfully different from anything you have ever seen. I can imagine it would have been different. I can't imagine just what it would have been like, but I can imagine it would have been very different. For one thing, all the houses were dazzlingly bright, and many of them covered with pictures. Some had great creatures carved in stone at each side of the door. Then the people, there were no black frock coats and tall hats, which was common in London, no dingy coats and skirts of good, useful, ugly stuffs warranted to wear well, not wear out. So, see this chap here? He's in dark clothing with a tall hat. None of this style of clothing at all. I'm just wondering if there's a picture with a woman. Yes, there's a woman over here with the parasol. She looks a little bit better dressed than some people, but the children, these children in the story, your average children who would have been on around walking down the streets would have been wearing clothes made out of material that would last as long as possible. The clothing would be passed on to other children in the family or to the neighbours' children or something like that because it was expensive. You didn't waste money on it. But the sort of clothes that they wore at home were nothing like these ones that are being worn here in Babylon. That was the point. Have a drink if you need it. Please do. Anyway, I drink to make sure my throat keeps going okay because otherwise it gets a little bit too dry and rough. Everyone's clothes were bright and beautiful, with blue and scarlet and green and gold. The market was brighter than you would think anything could be. There were stalls for everything you could possibly want, and for a great many things that if you wanted here and now, want would be your master. There were pineapples and peaches and heaps and stalls of crockery and glass things, beautiful shapes and glorious colours. There were stalls for necklaces and clasps and bracelets and brooches, for woven stuffs and furs and embroidered linen. The children had never seen half so many beautiful things together, even at Liberty's. Liberty's, I did a little bit of looking because it was referenced last time. Liberty's is a fabric shop that also did home decor products. And the chap who set it up quite a long time ago. The current building that they're in is around the corner from the one that it was originally set up in. It's been in London for a very long time, and it's been making products, luxurious style home products available for quite a long time. And that is the place that people would go to for really nice fancy things that were unusual, that had been imported from overseas, because that was a big part of what they did, is they would import stuff from overseas. The stuff that they're seeing at the local bazaar, the local market here in Babylon, is far more impressive than the stuff that they see at Liberties, and that has been their measure up until now of unusual and wonderful things. I've been there. It really is quite an experience. Where did we get to? The children had never seen half so many beautiful things together, even at Liberties. It seemed no time at all before the woman said, "It's nearly time now. We ought to be getting on towards the palace. It is as well to be early." So they went to the palace, and when they got there, it was more splendid than anything they had seen yet. For it was glowing with colours, and with gold and silver and black and white, like some magnificent embroidery. Flight after flight of broad marble steps led up to it, and at the edges of the stairs stood great images, 20 times as big as a man, images of men with wings like chain armour, folded around them, I suppose, and hawks' heads, and winged men with the heads of dogs, and there were the statues of great kings. Between the flights of steps were terraces where fountains played, and the Queen's Guard in white and scarlet, and armour that shone like gold, stood by twos, lining the way up the stairs. And a great body of them was massed by the vast door of the palace itself, where it stood glittering like an impossibly radiant peacock in the noonday sun. All sorts of people were passing up the steps to seek audience with the Queen, ladies in richly embroidered dresses with fringy flounces, poor folks in plain and simple clothes, dandies with beards oiled and curled. A dandy back in those days was someone who was a gentleman who was overdressed, who was dressed in a way that said, "Look at me, aren't I marvellous?" with the styling of what they did it. And so this is a reference to the fact that other cultures and other times had their own version of those, but you could pick who they were. With beards oiled and curled, and Cyril, Robert, Anthea and Jane went with the crowd. At the gate of the palace, the Samoyed put one eye cautiously out of the basket and whispered, "I can't be bothered with queens. I'll go home with this lady. I'm sure she'll get me some sand if you ask her to." "Oh, don't leave us," said Jane. The woman was giving some last instructions in court etiquette to Anthea, and did not hear Jane. "Don't be a little muff," said the Samoyed quite fiercely. "It's not a bit of good your having a charm. You never use it. If you want me, you've only got to say the name of power and ask the charm to bring me to you." I don't think they realised that. "I'd rather go with you," said Jane, and it was the most surprising thing she had ever said in her life. Everyone opened its mouth without thinking of manners, and Anthea, who was peeping into the Samoyed's basket, saw that its mouth opened wider than anybody's. Surprise. Nobody expected Jane to say she would rather spend time with the Samoyed than go and see the Queen. "You needn't gawp like that," Jane went on. "I'm not going to be bothered with queens any more than it is, and I know wherever it is, it'll take jolly good care that it's safe." "That's very good logic." "She's right there," said everyone, for they had observed that the Samoyed had a way of knowing which side its bread was buttered. She turned to the woman and said, "You'll take me home with you, won't you? And let me play with your little girls till the others have done with the Queen?" "Surely I will, little heart," said the woman, and then Anthea hurriedly stroked the Samoyed and embraced Jane, who took the woman's hand and trotted contentedly away with the Samoyed's bag under the other arm. The others stood looking after her till she, the woman, and the basket were lost in the many-coloured crowd. Then Anthea turned once more to the palace's magnificent doorway and said, "Let's ask the porter to take care of our Babylonian overcoats." So they took off the garments that the woman had lent them and stood amid the jostling petitioners of the Queen in their own English frocks and coats and hats and boots. "We want to see the Queen," said Cyril. "We come from the far empire where the sun never sets." A murmur of surprise and a thrill of excitement ran through the crowd. The door porter spoke to a black man who spoke to someone else. There was a whispering, waiting pause. Then a big man with a cleanly shaven face beckoned them from the top of a flight of red marble steps. They went up, the boots of Robert clattering more than usual because he was so nervous. A door swung open, a curtain was drawn back. A double line of bowing forms in gorgeous raiment formed a lane that led to the steps of the throne. And as the children advanced hurriedly, there came from the throne a voice very sweet and kind. "3 children from the land where the sun never sets, let them draw hither without fear." In another minute they were kneeling at the throne's foot, saying, "O Queen, live forever," exactly as the lady had told them. And a splendid dream lady, all gold and silver and jewels and snowy drift of veils, was raising Anthea and saying, "Don't be frightened. I really am so glad you came. The land where the sun never sets. I am delighted to see you. I was getting quite too dreadfully bored for anything." And behind Anthea the kneeling Cyril whispered in the ears of the respectful Robert, "Bobs, don't say anything to Panther. It's no use upsetting her, but we didn't ask for Jane's address and the Samiads with her." "Well," whispered Robert, "the charm can bring them to us at any moment. It said so." "Oh, yes," whispered Cyril in miserable derision. "We're all right, of course. So we are. Oh, yes, if only we'd got the charm." Then Robert saw and murmured, "Crikey," at the foot of the throne of Babylon, while Cyril hoarsely whispered the plain English fact, "Jane's got the charm around her neck, you silly cuckoo." "Crikey," Robert repeated in heartbroken undertones. And that's the end of that chapter, and we shall have another one. Yeah, we'll give it a go. I'll try not to interrupt so much. It should go a little bit faster. Oh, I didn't give you 2 pictures. So the first one is the others stood looking after her. So this is the lady taking Jane and the basket with them, and this is the others standing on the steps to the palace before they go in to see the Queen. And then the next picture is this one. "3 children from where the sun never sets." And I'll make it a bit bigger so you can actually see it. So here's the Queen with her wonderful over-the-top clothes and veils and stuff. These are her attendants and guards, and this is the throne and cushions and all these things. And this is Anthea, and Cyril and Robert. I'll just make this a little bit smaller because there's probably going to be another one. And then we'll race through the next section, because I still have other things to do today. Not that I don't want to be reading to you, but there's still some other stuff I have to get done. Sorry. Anyway, chapter 7, "The deepest dungeon below the castle moat." And it's in quotation marks. I don't know. Let's read on and find out. We are reading The Story of the Amulet by Edith Nesbit. And it's chapter 7, "The deepest dungeon below the castle moat." The Queen threw 3 of the red and gold embroidered cushions off the throne onto the marble steps that led up to it. "Just make yourself comfortable there," she said. "I'm simply dying to talk to you." Remember, she said she was bored. Doesn't help when you've got someone who's got that much power who's bored. Sorry, I'm just trying to get it ready for the next one because I feel sure that we will have a next one. And we'll see what happens. "Just make yourselves comfortable there," she said. "I'm simply dying to talk to you and to hear all about your wonderful country and how you've got here and everything, but I have to do justice every morning and everything, but it's such a bore, isn't it? Do you do justice in your own country?" She's the Queen and the King's away, so I suppose that's why. "No," said Cyril. "At least, of course, we try to, but not in this public sort of way, only in private." "Ah, yes," said the Queen. "I should much prefer a private audience myself, much easier to manage." But public opinion has to be considered. Doing justice is very hard work, even when you're brought up to it. We don't do justice, but we have to do scales, Jane and me. 20 minutes a day. It's simply horrid. What are scales? Said the Queen. And what is Jane? Jane is my little sister. One of the guards at the gate's wife is taking care of her, and scales are music. I never heard of the instrument, said the Queen. Do you sing? Oh, yes, we can sing in parts, said Anthea. That is magic, said the Queen. How many parts are you each cut into before you do it? We aren't cut at all, said Robert hastily. We couldn't sing if we were. We'll show you afterwards. So you shall, and now sit quiet like dear children and hear me do justice. The way I do it has always been admired. I oughtn't to say that, ought I? Sounds so conceited. But I don't mind with you, dears. Somehow I feel as though I'd known you quite a long time already. The Queen settled herself on her throne and made a signal to her attendants. The children, whispering together among the cushions on the steps of the throne, decided that she was very beautiful and very kind, but perhaps just the least bit flighty. The first person who came to ask for justice was a woman whose brother had taken the money the father had left for her. The brother had said it was the uncle who had the money. There was a good deal of talk, and the children were growing rather bored, when the Queen suddenly clapped her hands and said, Put both the men in prison till one of them owns up that the other is innocent. But suppose they both did it, Cyril could not help interrupting. Then prison's the best place for them, said the Queen. But suppose neither did it. That's impossible, said the Queen. A thing's not done unless someone does it, and you mustn't interrupt. Then came a woman in tears with a torn veil and real ashes on her head. At least Anthea thought so, but it may have been only road dust. She complained that her husband was in prison. What for? Said the Queen. They said it was for speaking evil of your Majesty, said the woman, but it wasn't. Someone had a spite against him. That was what it was. How do you know he hasn't spoken evil of me? Said the Queen. No one could, said the woman simply, when they'd once seen your beautiful face. Let the man out, said the Queen, smiling. Next case. So the appeal to her vanity worked. The next case was that of a boy who had stolen a fox. Like the Spartan boy, whispered Robert, but the Queen ruled that nobody could have any possible reason for owning a fox, and still less for stealing one. And she did not believe that there were any foxes in Babylon. She, at any rate, had never seen one, so the boy was released. Rather intriguing way of dealing out justice. The people came to the Queen about all sorts of family quarrels and neighbourly misunderstandings, from a fight between brothers over the division of an inheritance to the dishonest and unfriendly conduct of a woman who had borrowed a cooking pot at the last New Year's festival and not returned it yet. And the Queen decided everything, very, very decidedly indeed. At last she clapped her hands quite suddenly and with extreme loudness and said, The audience is over for today. Everyone said, May the Queen live forever, and went out. And the children were left alone in the Justice Hall with the Queen of Babylon and her ladies. There, said the Queen with a long sigh of relief, that's over. I couldn't have done another stitch of justice if you'd offered me the crown of Egypt. Sorry. Now come into the garden and we'll have a nice, long, cosy talk. She led them through long, narrow corridors whose walls they somehow felt were very, very thick, into a sort of garden courtyard. There were thick shrubs closely planted, and roses were trained over trellises and made a pleasant shade. Needed, indeed, for already the sun was as hot as it is in England in August at the seaside, which is probably why the walls are so thick too. Slaves spread cushions on a low marble terrace, and a big man with a smooth face served cool drinks in cups of gold studded with beryls. They're a special type of stone. He drank a little from the Queen's cup before handing it to her. "That's rather a nasty trick," whispered Robert, who had been carefully taught never to drink out of one of the nice, shiny metal cups that are chained to the London drinking fountain without first rinsing it out thoroughly. I actually came across a picture of that. There used to be in several places in London a place where there would be a spout out of like the base of a statue type of thing, or a wall or a plinth. There was a metal spout coming out, and there would be fresh water would come out of that, and then the excess would be draining away, or it had a little tap on it, and chained to the base of where the tap was a small a cup that you could put under the drinking fountain, rinse it out, and then put under there again and have a drink of water if you needed, because you couldn't just go into a corner store and buy a bottle of water. That wasn't the done thing. And often there weren't great water supplies either. So a safe drinking water fountain was a good idea. And so he had learnt that you're meant to actually rinse them out with the ones in London. The Queen overheard him. "Not at all," she said. "Ritti Marduk is a very clean man, and one has to have someone as a taster, you know, because of poison." The word made the children feel rather creepy, but Ritti Marduk had tasted all the cups, so they felt pretty safe. The drink was delicious, very cold and tasting like lemonade and partly like penny ices. That's like an ice block here in New Zealand. "Leave us," said the Queen, and all the court ladies in their beautiful many-folded, many-coloured fringed dresses filed out slowly, and the children were left alone with the Queen. "Now," she said, "tell me all about yourselves." They looked at each other. "You, Bobs," said Cyril. "No, Anthea," said Robert. "No, you, Cyril," said Anthea. "Don't you remember how pleased the Queen of India was when you told her all about us?" Cyril muttered that it was all very well, and so it was, for when he had told the tale of the phoenix and the carpet to the Rani, it had been only the truth, and all the truth that he had to tell, but now it was not easy to tell a convincing story without mentioning the amulet, which of course it wouldn't have done to mention, and without owning that they were really living in London about 2,500 years later than the time they were talking in. Cyril took refuge in the tale of the Samoyed and its wonderful power of making wishes come true. The children had never been able to tell anyone before, and Cyril was surprised to find that the spell which kept them silent in London did not work here. "Something to do with our being in the past, I suppose," he said to himself. "This is most interesting," said the Queen. "We must have this Samoyed for the banquet tonight. Its performance will be one of the most popular turns in the whole programme. Where is it?" Anthea explained that they did not know, also why it was that they did not know. "Oh, that is quite simple," said the Queen, and everyone breathed a deep sigh of relief as she said it. "Ritti Marduk shall run down to the gates and find out which guard your sister went home with. Might he," Anthea's voice was tremulous, "might he, would it interfere with his meal times or anything like that if he went now?" "Of course he shall go now. He may think himself lucky if he gets his meals at any time," said the Queen heartily, and clapped her hands. "May I send a letter?" asked Cyril, pulling out a red-backed penny account book and feeling in his pockets for a stump of pencil that he knew was in one of them. "By all means. I shall call my scribe." "Oh, I can scribe enough, thanks," said Cyril, finding the pencil and licking its point. He even had to bite the wood a little, for it was very blunt. "Oh, you clever, clever boy," said the Queen. "Do let me watch you do it." Cyril wrote on a leaf of the book. It was of rough, woolly paper, with hairs that stuck out, and would have gotten his pen if he'd been using one, and ruled for accounts. Oh, the book was ruled for accounts. Yeah, so the quality of paper back in their day was nowhere near as good as it is now. Now, paper that you write on in the Western world is generally universally of a reasonable quality. The surface has been smoothed and possibly even coated to make it even more smooth. But back when the kids were little, when the story is set, there was a much wider range of quality, which is what that was referencing. "Hide it most carefully before you come here," he wrote. Oh, no, not her voice. "Hide it most carefully before you come here," he wrote, "and don't mention it, and destroy this letter. Everything is going A1. The Queen is a fair treat. There's nothing to be afraid of." "What curious characters and what a strange flat surface," said the Queen. "What have you inscribed?" "I've scribed," replied Cyril cautiously, "that you are fair and like a festival, and that she need not be afraid, and she is to come at once." Ritti Marduk, who had come in and had stood waiting while Cyril wrote, his Babylonish eyes nearly staring out of his Babylonish head, now took the letter with some reluctance. "O Queen, live forever. Is it a charm?" he timidly asked. "A strong charm, most great lady?" "Yes," said Robert unexpectedly. "It is a charm, but it won't hurt anyone until you've given it to Jane, and then she'll destroy it so that it can't hurt anyone. It's most awfully strong, as strong as peppermint," he ended abruptly. "I know not the god," said Ritti Marduk, bending timorously. "She'll tear it up directly she gets it," said Robert. "That'll end the charm. You needn't be afraid if you go now." Ritti Marduk went, seeming only partly satisfied. And then the Queen began to admire the penny account book and the bit of pencil in so marked and significant a way that Cyril felt he could do no less than press them upon her as a gift. She ruffled the leaves delightedly. "What a wonderful substance," she said. "And with this style you make charms." Like stylus? Sorry, seat, uncomfortable, moving. "Make a charm for me. Do you know," her voice sank to a whisper, "the names of the great ones of your own far country?" "Rather," said Cyril, and hastily wrote the names of Alfred the Great, Shakespeare, Nelson, Gordon, I think that was one of the military men, Lord Beaconsfield, Mr. Rudyard Kipling, and Mr. Sherlock Holmes, while the Queen watched him with unbated breath, as Anthea said afterwards. She took the book and hid it reverently among the bright folds of her gown. "You shall teach me later to say the great names," she said, "and the names of their ministers. Perhaps the great Nisroch is one of them." "I don't think so," said Cyril. "Mr. Campbell Bannerman's Prime Minister, and Mr. Burns a minister. So is the Archbishop of Canterbury, I think, but I'm not sure. And Dr. Parker was one, I know, and—" "No more," said the Queen, putting her hands to her ears. "My head's going round with all those great names. You shall teach them to me later, because of course you'll make us a nice long visit now you have come, won't you? Now tell me. But no, I am quite tired out with your being so clever. Besides, I'm sure you'll like me to tell you something, wouldn't you?" "Yes," said Anthea. "I want to know how it is that the king has gone." "Excuse me, but you should say the king, may he live forever," said the Queen gently. "I beg your pardon," Anthea hastened to say. "The king, may he live forever, has gone to fetch home his 14th wife. I don't think even Bluebeard had as many as that, and besides, he hasn't killed you at any rate." The Queen looked bewildered. "She means," explained Robert, "that English kings only have one wife. At least Henry VIII had 7 or 8, but not all at once." "In our country," said the Queen scornfully, "a king would not reign a day who had only one wife. No one would respect him." "And quite right, too. Then are all the other 13 alive?" asked Anthea. "Of course they are. Poor, mean-spirited things. I don't associate with them, of course. I am the Queen. They are only the wives." "I see," said Anthea, gasping. "Yeah, I would have been too. That's a bit strange to me. But oh, my dears," the Queen went on, "such a to-do as there's been about this last wife. You never did. It really was too funny. We wanted an Egyptian princess. The king, may he live forever, has got a wife from most of the important nations. and he had set his heart on an Egyptian one to complete his collection. Well, of course, to begin with, we sent a handsome present of gold. The Egyptian king sent back some horses, quite a few. He's fearfully stingy. Obviously, horses didn't impress them then. And he said he liked the gold very much, but what they were really short of was lapis lazuli, which is a blue stone that's used for some of the really intense blue that you see on Egyptian things. So, of course, we sent him some, but by that time he'd begun to use the gold to cover the beams of the roof of the temple of the sun god, and he hadn't nearly enough to finish the job. So we sent some more, and on it went, for years. You see, each journey takes at least 6 months, and at last we asked the hand of his daughter in marriage. Yes, and then, said Anthea, who wanted to get to the princess part of the story. Well then, said the queen, when he'd got everything out of us that he could and only given the meanest presents in return, he sent to say he would esteem the honour of an alliance very highly, only unfortunately he hadn't any daughter, but he hoped one would be born soon, and if so she should certainly be reserved for the king of Babylon. What a trick, said Cyril. Yes, wasn't it? And then we said his sister would do, and then there were more gifts and more journeys, and now at last the tiresome black-haired thing is coming, and the king, may he live forever, has gone 7 days' journey to meet her at Carchemish, and he's gone in his best chariot, the one inlaid with lapis lazuli and gold, with the gold-plated wheels and onyx-studded hubs, much too great an honour in my opinion. She'll be here tonight. There'll be a grand banquet to celebrate her arrival. She won't be present, of course. She'll be having her baths and her anointings and all that sort of thing. We always clean our foreign brides very carefully. It takes 2 or 3 weeks. Now it's dinner time, and you shall eat with me, for I can see that you are of high rank. She led them into a cool, dark hall, with many cushions on the floor. On these they sat, and low tables were brought, beautiful tables of smooth blue stone mounted in gold. On these golden trays were placed. But there were no knives or forks or spoons. The children expected the queen to call for them, but no, she just ate with her fingers. And as the first dish was a great tray of boiled corn and meat and raisins all mixed up together. Corn in these days was wheat, not sweet corn, because that was discovered in the Americas, much later than this. Boiled corn and meat and raisins all mixed up together and melted fat poured all over the tray. It was found difficult to follow her example with anything like what we are used to think of as good table manners. There were stewed quinces afterwards, and dates in syrup, and thick yellowy cream. It was the kind of dinner you hardly ever get in Fitzroy Street, so it was fancy food. Quince. Do you know what a quince is? Look it up. Find out. I have one tip for you to do with quince, and it comes from my son. Never eat quince raw. Look up quince and find out for yourself. After dinner, everybody went to sleep, even the children. The queen awoke with a start. Good gracious, she cried. What a time! We've slept. I must rush off and dress for the banquet. I shan't have much more than time. Enough time. Hasn't Ritti Marduk got back with our sister and the Samoyed yet? Anthea asked. I quite forgot to ask. I'm sorry, said the queen. And of course they wouldn't announce her unless I told them to, except during justice hours. I expect she's waiting outside. I'll see. Ritti Marduk came in a moment later. I regret that I have been unable to find your sister. The beast she bears with her in a basket has bitten the child of the guard, and your sister and the beast set out to come to you. The police say they have no clue. No doubt we shall have news of her in a few weeks. He bowed and withdrew. The horror of this threefold loss, Jane, the Psammead, and the amulet, gave the children something to talk about while the Queen was dressing. I shall not report their conversation. It was very gloomy. Everyone repeated himself several times, and the discussion ended in each of them blaming the other two for having let Jane go. You know how the type of talk goes, don't you? At last Cyril said, "After all, she's with the Psammead, so she's all right. The Psammead is jolly careful of itself too, and it isn't as if we were in any danger. Let's try to buck up and enjoy the banquet." They did enjoy the banquet. They had a beautiful bath, which was delicious, were heavily oiled all over, including their hair, and that was most unpleasant, not what they used to. That was part of a cleaning regime back then, obviously. Just trying to pull this up so I can check where we're up to on the pictures. Right, got it. Then they dressed again and were presented to the king, who was most affable. The banquet was long, there were all sorts of nice things to eat, and everybody seemed to eat and drink a good deal, as is common when there's feasting. Everyone lay on cushions and couches, ladies on one side and gentlemen on the other, and after the eating was done, each lady went and sat by some gentleman who seemed to be her sweetheart or her husband, for they were very affectionate to each other. The court dresses had gold threads woven in them, very bright and beautiful. The middle of the room was left clear, and different people came and did amusing things. Here's your picture. Different people came and did amusing things. So there's people around the edge of the room, and then there's the space in the middle, which is used for the entertainment. People came and did amusing things. There were conjurers and jugglers and snake charmers, which last one Anthea did not like at all. Surprise, surprise. When it got dark, torches were lighted, cedar splinters dropped in oil, blazed in copper dishes set high on poles. So the cedar splinter would actually act as a wick. Sorry, burping. Then there was a dancer who hardly danced at all, only just struck attitudes. Attitudes is something that I've come across in other stories. It's a pose that depicts a particular emotion or thought, is what an attitude is in these sort of stories. Sorry, I'm just looking across at the pictures that come next. So that's in the context of here. That is what they only. What was the phrasing they used here? The dancers didn't really dance. They struck attitudes, holding all these poses, which kind of makes sense in this context. She had hardly any clothes and was not at all pretty. The children were rather bored by her, but everyone else was delighted, including the king. "By the beard of Nimrod," he cried, "ask what you like, girl, and you shall have it." "I want nothing," said the dancer. "The honour of having pleased the king, may he live for ever." Yes, strike an attitude takes longer than strike a pose. That's true. But the posing the way, attitudes were actually a collection of particular things that were done at different time periods in English history by women as a social thing. You would strike a pose in normal talk, but striking an attitude would be so-and-so, some famous character, dreaming of her love's return sort of thing, and it would be a particular depiction of a particular thing. And so this is what the children are familiar with, which is the term striking an attitude. If anyone's read, who is it? There was something else I was not online, but there was something else I was reading reasonably recently that actually had talk of striking an attitude, and it was just one of these things that young woman would practice. And I would say from the age bracket of and just description of the dancer that it's, yes, one of the younger women who was therefore a little more appealing in her looks, and so therefore it was more part of it. I want nothing, said the dancer. The honour of having pleased the king, may he live for ever, is reward enough for me. So the king was so pleased with this modest and sensible reply that he gave her the gold collar off his own neck. Very smart. Yeah, no worries if you can't stay here, Goriki. I understand about storms rolling in. Ours aren't quite as drastic as yours are. We currently don't have one going on, although the sky has got a lot darker, but we may have one in the next day or two. So yeah, if you have to go, if you disappear suddenly, I totally understand. And for those of you who don't know who I'm talking to, Goriki is one of the other readers in Codex, which is this group of fabulous people who read stories online that you can enjoy. You can find out more about us all either joining our Discord server, and I'll give you the link for that. I just have to type here. Or you can look at underneath the Twitch window here is a section there that talks about Codex, and it's got links to all of their different Twitch channels, all of the members of Codex who are readers. So there you go. I'll carry on with what we're reading at the moment. The king was so pleased with this modest and sensible reply that he gave her the gold collar off his own neck, and I'm wondering if she's been taught that that was the best way to get it. I say, said Cyril, awed by the magnificence of the gift. It's all right, whispered the queen. It's not his best collar by any means. We always keep a stock of cheap jewellery for these occasions. And now, you promised to sing us something. Would you like my minstrels to accompany you? No, thank you, said Anthea quickly. The minstrels had been playing off and on all the time, and their music reminded Anthea of the band she and the others had once had on the 5th of November. The penny horns, a tin whistle, a tea tray, the tongs, a policeman's rattle, and a toy drum. Not so wonderfully musical then, in their mind. They had enjoyed this band very much at the time, but it was quite different when someone else was making the same kind of music. Anthea understood now that father had not been really heartless and unreasonable when he had told them to stop that infuriating din. They've been having to listen to it all evening. What shall we sing? Cyril was asking. Sweet and low, suggested Anthea. Too soft. I vote for Who Will O'er the Downs. Now then, 1, 2, 3. Oh, I don't know the tune for this. I'm just going to recite the lyrics. Oh, who will o'er the downs so free? Oh, who will with me ride? Oh, who will up and follow me to win a blooming bride? Her father he has locked the door, her mother keeps the key, but neither bolt nor bar shall keep my own true love from me. Jane, the alto, was missing, and Robert, unlike the mother of the lady in the song, never could keep the key, but the song, even so, was sufficiently unlike anything any of them had ever heard to rouse the Babylonian court to the wildest enthusiasm. More, more, cried the king. By my beard, this savage music is a new thing. Sing again. So they sang. I saw her bower at the twilight grey, 'twas guarded safe and sure. I saw her bower at the break of day, 'twas guarded then no more. The violets they were all asleep, and there was none to see the greeting fair that passed there between my love and me. Shouts of applause greeted the ending of the verse, and the king would not be satisfied till they had sung all their part songs. They only knew 3. Twice over, and ended with Men of Harlech in unison. Then the king stood up in his royal robes with his high, narrow crown on his head and shouted, By the beak of Nisroch, ask what you will, strangers from the land where the sun never sets. We ought to say it's enough honour, like the dancer did, whispered Anthea. No, let's ask for it, said Robert. No, I'm sure the others' manners, said Anthea. But Robert, who was excited by the music and the flaring torches and the applause and the opportunity, spoke up before the others could stop him. Give us the half of the amulet that what has on it the name Hekau Setche, he said, adding as an afterthought, O king, live forever. As he spoke that great name, those in the pillared hall fell on their faces and lay still. all but the queen, who crouched amid her cushions with her head in her hands, and the king, who stood upright, perfectly still, like the statue of a king in stone. It was only for a moment, though. Then his great voice thundered out. Picture. There he is standing, everyone else is bowing. The queen has her head in her hands in the cushions. His great voice thundered out, "Guards, seize them!" Instantly, from nowhere it seemed, sprang 8 soldiers in bright armour inlaid with gold, and tunics of red and white. Very splendid they were, and very alarming. "Imperious and sacrilegious wretches!" shouted the king. Not imperious, impious. "And sacrilegious wretches," shouted the king. "To the dungeons with them! We will find a way tomorrow to make them speak, for without doubt they can tell us where to find the lost half of it." A wall of scarlet and white and steel and gold closed up round the children and hurried them away among the many great pillars of the great hall. As they went, they heard the voices of the courtiers loud in horror. "You've done it this time," said Cyril with extreme bitterness. "Oh, it will come right. It must. It always does," said Anthea desperately. They could not see where they were going because the guards surrounded them so closely. But the ground under their feet, smooth marble at first, grew rougher, like stone. Then it was loose earth and sand, and they felt the night air. Then there was more stone and steps down. "It's my belief we really are going to the deepest dungeon below the castle moat this time," said Cyril. "Oh dear." And they were. At least it was not below a moat, but below the river Euphrates, which was just as bad, if not worse. In a most unpleasant place it was. Damp. Very damp. Very, very damp, and with an odd musty smell rather like the shells of oysters. There was a torch, that is to say, a copper basket on a high stick with oiled wood burning in it. By its light the children saw that the walls were green and that trickles of water ran down them and dripped from the roof. There were things on the floor that looked like newts. Newts are a type of, like a lizard. We don't have them in New Zealand. I've never seen them, but I remember reading about them in kids' stories because I read English kids' stories. And in the dark corners, creepy, shiny things moved sluggishly, uneasily, horribly. Robert's heart sank right into those really reliable boots of his. Anthea and Cyril each had a private struggle with that inside disagreeableness, which is part of all of us and which is sometimes called the old Adam. And both were victors. Neither of them said to Robert, and both tried hard not even to think it, "This is your doing." Anthea had the additional temptation to add, "I told you so," and she resisted it successfully. "Sacrilege and impious cheek," said the captain of the guard to the jailer, to be kept during the king's pleasure. I expect he means to get some pleasure out of them tomorrow. He'll tickle them up." "Poor little kids," said the jailer. "Oh yes," said the captain, "I've got kids of my own too, but it doesn't do to let domestic sentiment interfere with one's public duties. Good night." The soldiers tramped heavily off in their white and red and steel and gold. The jailer, with a bunch of big keys in his hand, stood looking pityingly at the children. He shook his head twice and went out. "Courage," said Anthea. "I know it will be all right. It's only a dream, really, you know. It must be. I don't believe about time being only a something or other of thought. It is a dream, and we're bound to wake up all right and safe." "Huh," said Cyril bitterly, and Robert suddenly said, "It's all my doing. If it really is all up, do please not keep a down on me about it, and tell father. Oh, I forgot." What he had forgotten was that his father was 3,000 miles and 5,000 or more years away from him. "All right, Bob's old man," said Cyril. That was quite good of Robert to actually own up to it this time. and Anthea got hold of Robert's hand and squeezed it. Then the jailer came back with a platter of hard, flat cakes made of coarse grain, very different from the cream and juicy date feasts of the palace. Also a pitcher of water. "There," he said. "Oh, thank you so very much. You are kind," said Anthea feverishly. "Go to sleep," said the jailer, pointing to a heap of straw in a corner. "Tomorrow comes soon enough." "Oh dear, Mr. Jailer," said Anthea, "whatever will they do to us tomorrow?" "They'll try to make you tell things," said the jailer grimly, "and my advice is if you've got nothing to tell, make something up. Then perhaps they'll sell you to the northern nations. Regular savages they are. Good night." "Good night," said the three trembling voices, which their owners strove in vain to render firm. Then he went out, and the three were left alone in the damp, dim vault. "I know the light won't last long," said Cyril, looking at the flickering brazier. "Is it any good, do you think, calling on the name when we haven't got the charm?" suggested Anthea. "I shouldn't think so, but we might try." So they tried, but the blank silence of the damp dungeon remained unchanged. "What was the name the Queen said?" asked Cyril suddenly. Nesbit, which is actually the name of the author. "Something, you know, the slave of the great names." "Wait a sec," said Robert, "though I don't know why you want it. Nisroch. That's it," spelt with a CH at the end. Then Anthea pulled herself together. All her muscles tightened, and the muscles of her mind and soul, if you can call them that, tightened too. Hekau Setche, she cried in a fervent voice. "O Nisroch, servant of the great ones, come and help us." There was a waiting silence. Then a cold blue light awoke in the corner where the straw was, and in the light they saw coming towards them a strange and terrible figure. I won't try to describe it because the drawing shows it exactly as it was. Sorry, I'm just checking to see if there was a picture to go there. No, but there is a picture coming up soon. And I need to get it ready for you. Sorry, nearly there. Right. There was a waiting silence, then a cold blue light awoke in the corner where the straw was, and in the light they saw coming towards them a strange and terrible figure. I won't try to describe it because the drawing shows it exactly as it was and exactly as the old Babylonians carved it on their stones, so that you can see it in our own British Museum at this day. Now, I would guess that they actually still have those carvings there at the British Museum because they have a great many things from all over the place. Some things have been returned to the countries they came from, in which case they have made like copies of them out of fiberglass or carved in stone or whatever, something that looks like them so you can see them. But other things they actually still have the originals of. It's quite impressive, some of the things they have there. Exactly as the old Babylonians carved it on their stones, so that you can see it in our own British Museum at this day. I will just say that it had eagle's wings and an eagle's head and the body of a man. It came towards them strong and unspeakably horrible. "Oh, go away," cried Anthea, but Cyril cried, "No, stay." The creature hesitated, then bowed low before them on the damp floor of the dungeon. "Speak," it said in a harsh, grating voice like large, rusty keys being turned in locks, which I can't do. "The servant of the great ones is your servant. What is your need that you call on the name of Nisroch?" "We want to go home," said Robert. "No, no," cried Anthea. "We want to be where Jane is." Nisroch raised his great arm and pointed at the wall of the dungeon. Wings and a head like an eagle or a great bird and the body of a man. and light coming from him. That would have also been quite striking because they were in a fairly dark space. Nisroch raised his great arm and pointed at the wall of the dungeon, and as he pointed, the wall disappeared. And instead of the damp green rocky surface, there shone and glowed a room with rich hangings of red silk, embroidered with golden water lilies, with cushioned couches and great mirrors of polished steel, and in it was the Queen, and before her on a red pillow sat the Samiad, its fur hunched up in an irritated and discontented way. On a blue-covered couch lay Jane, fast asleep. "Walk forward without fear," said Nisroch. "Is there aught else that the servant of the great name can do for those who speak that name?" "No, oh, no," said Cyril. "It's all right now, thanks ever so." "You are a dear," said Anthea, not in the least knowing what she was saying. "Oh, thank you, but do go now." She finds him quite frightening. She caught the hand of the creature, and it was cold and hard in hers, like a hand of stone. "Go forward," said Nisroch, and they all went. "Oh, my goodness gracious," said the Queen as they stood before her. "How did you get here? I knew you were magic. I meant to let you out the first thing in the morning, if I could slip away. But thanks be to Dagon, you've managed it for yourselves. You must get away. I'll wake my chief lady, and she shall call Ritti Marduk, and he'll let you out the back way, and—" "Don't rouse anybody, for goodness sake," said Anthea, "except Jane, and I'll rouse her." She shook Jane with energy, and Jane slowly awoke. "Ritti Marduk brought them in hours ago." "Really," said the Queen, "but I wanted to have the Samiad all to myself for a bit. You'll excuse the little natural deception. It's part of the Babylonish character, don't you know? But I don't want anything to happen to you. Do let me rouse someone." "No, no, no," said Anthea with desperate earnestness. She thought she knew enough of what the Babylonians were like when they were roused. "We can go by our own magic, and you will tell the king it wasn't the jailer's fault, it was Nisroch." "Nisroch," echoed the Queen. "You are indeed magicians." Jane sat up, blinking stupidly. "Hold it up and say the word," cried Cyril, catching up the Samiad, which mechanically bit him, but only very slightly. "Which is the east?" asked Jane. "Behind me," said the Queen. "Why?" Hekal Setche, said Jane sleepily, and held up the charm. And then they were all in the dining room at 300 Fitzroy Street. "Jane," cried Cyril with great presence of mind, "go and get the plate of sand down for the Samiad." Jane went. "Look here," he said quickly as the sound of her boots grew less loud on the stairs. "Don't let's tell her about the dungeon and all that. It'll only frighten her so that she'll never want to go anywhere else." "Right-o," said Cyril, but Anthea felt that she could not have said a word to save her life. "Why did you want to come back in such a hurry?" asked Jane, returning with the plate of sand. "It was awfully jolly in Babylon, I think. I liked it, no end." "Oh, yes," said Cyril carelessly. "It was jolly enough, but I thought we'd been there long enough. Mother always says you oughtn't to wear out your welcome." And that's the end of our chapter and today's reading. So there you go. Sorry. Now, just letting you know, the next chapter is chapter 8, and it's called The Queen in London. Is it this queen? The Queen of Babylon? Or is it another? You'll have to come on Monday and find out, won't you? My links, just in case you didn't get them before. So YouTube for the playlists and Discord to join in the conversation with others about the books that we read and possibly see the illustrations if I remember to put them up. Or you can find them and put them up there too, and make suggestions about other stories we're going to read. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that I have other links that you need. Can't think of any at the moment. Do check out Codex the group of readers I was talking to you about, there's the Discord link, their Discord link, the Codex Discord link, as opposed to my one. And also, see if that one worked. Yes, Go Riki, one of our Codex readers. And there are other Codex readers, which I will give you the link for. And hopefully I have spelt that one correctly. Yes, that one worked as well. And my brain is going blah, 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 blah. You know, like blah, 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 that sort of thing. Just checking to see if there's anyone else here that I know is one of the readers. No, nobody else that I can think of specifically who's in the users who's here, who is one of the Codex readers. Now, not everybody is online at the moment. We are all around the world, but if you look at the link section below where my video is here on Twitch, and if you're on YouTube, go across to my Twitch link and you'll find it on the About page. You will see a list of all the different readers that are part of Codex. So please check them all out, support them, go and follow them, subscribe to their channels, give them bits, all of those things, encourage them. One of the ones that I would really love you to support, if you can, please, is, and I just have to remember the correct way to spell the name. So Ken, Soft Spoken, is trying to get to affiliate level on Twitch, which means that he'll then be able to have emotes and all sorts of other things like that that you can use when he's reading and you're wanting to chat and all that sort of thing. So I especially ask if you could go to Ken's channel. That's Soft Spoken, spelt with 2 N's at the end of Ken, and also Glacier. I'll put in a link for Glacier underscore. Yes, that one worked. Also, Glacier is wanting to get to that level. I would get for getting to affiliate. Affiliate is really cool because it means that Twitch sees you a lot more, takes you a lot more seriously. It means you can put emotes available for your chat members. It means that if someone wants to subscribe, you get given a little bit of the money from that. If someone donates bits, you get a little bit of that, and it's a great way to encourage them. Glacier Nesta does talk shows and podcasts, and that's their link there. Soft Spoken reads stories as well. I'm pretty sure he does some other stuff, but I've only ever watched him when he's reading stories. They're great. Yeah, there are some people who get affiliate really quickly, and there's others who just keep plodding away and eventually get it. I was one of those ones. I got to the point where I just decided I'm just going to do what I do, and if people come and follow me and join in and chat, that's the big thing for a lot of us. We often have enough people following us sometimes, but we don't get enough people being there when we're live and joining in with the chat. And the more people can join in with your chat, the more it will help Twitch to see that, yes, you are actually somebody who's doing something. And so they will show you more readily to other people who are looking for something similar. So please, both Glacier Nesta and Soft Spoken, both of those, please, I ask you, go to their channels, follow them so that Twitch will actually let you know when they're live. And then when they're live, go and listen to their stories or watch their playing games or whatever and interact in their chat with them. Go on, bless their socks off. Do it. You're a good person. You can do that sort of thing. I know you can. So I'm going to get on with my day here. It's after 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I've got to think about what I'm doing for dinner. What are you going to do? Yes, all sorts of things. I'm sure you've got lots of things because I'm sure it's not that time of day for you. So I'm just going to sign off by saying thank you for being here. I love having everybody here and joining in with the chat and all those things and lurking. I love it when people just come and listen. I love stories. I love books. I love people discovering them if they've never discovered them before, coming across books that are new for them. It's always wonderful to see that sort of like, yay, I love this. Can we have more of this sort of thing going on? So I'm just going to sign off by saying, see you next time. And in the meantime, happy reading. Bye.